Stan, thank you for those kind words to you and Sarah Lee, Harriet, the entire team at Council for Life. Thank you so much to everyone for inviting me here. To Amy Simmons. Amy, where are you? There you are, oh, right in front of me. How I got here in the first place. To you and your family, your beautiful hearts and hospitality and your passion for Council for Life is truly contagious. And to Tim and Sharice Brown, where are you? There you are. Dear friends of mine, and just such special, special people, both of you. Tim is a Heisman Trophy winner, and more importantly, a follower of the Lord who puts him first. So exciting over the years to see how you use what God has given you for such good, such an inspiration. To every worker, every volunteer, every supporter of Council for Life, each of you for coming out to this event today, you are my heroes. Would you please give yourselves a big round of applause? The work that Council for Life does is life-saving and life-changing. You have incredible people that come and speak with you, and I have to tell you, it's really humbling to be here. I'm very mindful if people are aware of me at all. It's usually in a pretty fragmented way. If you're old enough, you might think of me as the model person from the last century. And, you know, you might be thinking, Kathy Ireland? Oh, great. You know, what's she going to do? Teach us a new pose? Well, all right, if you're interested, okay. After a big lunch like we just enjoyed, it was so good, what you do is you turn sideways, suck it in, twist at the torso, and you create the illusion of a waistline. It's all an illusion. And then after you've been breaking into your kids' Halloween candy for the last week and a half, little secret I shared with my friends last night, what you do, you get yourself a really good photo retoucher. Mine is a woman named Paulinda. She is great, and I'm telling you that in Photoshop, there's nothing that can't be done anymore. Biggest secret of modeling. So with that pose, you can see I was okay as a model, but certainly never super. Tried and failed many businesses before starting our brand back in 1993 with a pair of socks from my kitchen table. But I look at failure as education, and in that respect, I'm very well educated. The video introduction, the billion-dollar business. First of all, gross receipts have absolutely nothing to do with anyone's personal income, including my own. Even though the brand bears my name, it is the result of thousands and thousands of hours of work performed by many, many people. And we are grateful that our work generates employment. And every decision, we look at the implication. How does that impact the jobs? Shortly after becoming pro-life, I was invited to appear on a show called Politically Incorrect. And I said I didn't want to take the time to do that if it was going to be a fluff piece, but if we could speak about something of substance, the life issue maybe, then I would be interested. They said yes. And the advisors came out of the woodwork telling me, don't touch this topic. It's a lose-lose situation. You're going to alienate yourself from your customer. You're going to kill your business. Okay, so if I do it, I could kill our business. And if I did it, maybe one person watching might not kill their baby. So it was a no-brainer. someone I work with who I love, one of my business partners, came to me and he said, Kathy, you know you need to do this, and you know it could destroy our business. And if our business goes down the toilet, so be it. We'll start over. If one woman watching cancels her abortion, it is so worth it. And so I encourage all of you to please surround yourself with people who are encouraging, who will support you. There's a lot of negativity out there. There are a lot of people who would seek to silence us. Some people ask, have you speaking publicly about this topic, has it hurt your business? And I thank them for their concern or their curiosity, whatever it might be. And I tell them it's irrelevant. It's a human life. There's no comparison. Have certain people in the media blocked us? Of course they have, absolutely. But you know what? We're doing just fine. And I encourage you, please don't let anyone silence you, and please don't let your own fear silence you. I think I'm particularly sensitive of people attempting to silence. In the video introduction, you heard Maria Bartiromo quoting me, my old job description being shut up and pose. So I had an opportunity to speak, and a critic said I had a voice that could kill small animals. And it was not a real confidence builder, but it was a fork in the road. I'm grateful for it because it forced me to decide if I was going to let the cruelty of that remark forever silence me, or despite the criticism, would I move forward to speak on issues of importance? And I am so grateful to be here with all of you today. When we receive criticism, it's also important to be discerning. Sometimes it's just noise and we gotta just turn it off. Other times, it can be a gift wrapped in a really nasty package. I don't know that any small animals were killed or harmed with my voice. I hope not. But I was 25 years old and I could not order a pizza. They thought I was a kid making a prank phone call. So there was some truth to it. It was a learning experience for me. And this afternoon, I'm going to share with you a little bit about my journey from being a pro-choice Christian to someone who is committed to fighting for the rights of the unborn. As I share my faith with you, please know it is not my intent to impose my faith on anyone here. I know there are people here who don't share my faith, and you do not need to. You don't need to have any faith to know that it's wrong to kill an innocent human life. That is a universal truth. I don't remember a time when I didn't believe in God, but I didn't know him, and I didn't know that I didn't know him. There were a few years we went to church as a family, and it was really clear Mom and Dad were not into it. It was duty, it was guilt. We soon stopped going. When I was a teenager, Mom went to nursing school, and there was a woman in her class, and my mom said to her, "What's with you? You know, you're raising teenage daughters, yet you have this peace. I want what you have." This woman had Jesus Christ, and my mom became a Christian. In the beginning, Mom was quiet about her faith, but I was noticing this transformation. I went off to Paris to start modeling. It sounds so much more glamorous than it really was. I was 18 years old. I was traveling alone. I was staying in a home where I didn't feel comfortable, so much so that any time I spent there, I would just go lock myself in my room. My room was at the end of this long, dark hallway. And I later learned that other girls who stayed there referred to it as the dungeon. And it was in the dungeon that my life was forever changed. It's 1981, so no internet, no cell phones, I didn't have a TV in that room. And I just graduated from high school by the skin of my teeth, and I swore off I was never going to read another book again, as if I read that many. And it's late at night, middle of the night, and unbeknownst to me, Mom had slipped a Bible into my suitcase. I'd never read a Bible in my life. I don't know if I ever saw one in person. We never had one at home. I don't remember seeing one at that church we attended. And it was out of jet lag, boredom, and loneliness that I picked it up, randomly opened up to the Gospel of Matthew, and as I read, my life was forever changed. Here I was, this rebellious teenager questioning authority. Who really knows what's right and what's wrong? What is the truth really? And I knew that what I was holding in my hand was the truth, the inerrant, infallible Word of God. And there was no one with me in that room. Nobody was influencing me. And as I read, I didn't think, I want to be this faith or that faith. It was just, I want to follow Jesus. And that relationship gave me the strength to walk away from compromising situations. If He is with us, who can be against us? I regret that I remained a baby Christian for a very long time. As I would read the Bible, certain verses would jump out at me and I just cling to them. I think they were wonderful. And other verses I would look at, I would think, well, that's got to be a typo, or it doesn't pertain to me, something, I would justify it away. And what I was doing, I was trying to mold God into what I wanted Him to be, rather than allowing Him to mold me into the person He made me to be. And that is so arrogant. And I'm just so grateful that He's so forgiving and so faithful and so patient with us. So I missed all those verses where God clearly talks about how He feels about life and when it begins, and even the punishment for anyone who would hurt a pregnant woman and injure that baby. So how did I become pro-choice in the first place? Where were those first seeds planted? Went to public high school in Santa Barbara, and one day, driver's ed class, a girl, one of our fellow peers, students, who had volunteered at a large national women's health clinic, came to class. She had been recruited to tell us about all the services that were available to us and to let us know that we could have an abortion and our parents would never have to know. My husband, as well as being a commercial fisherman, is an emergency room physician. And he could lose his license and get arrested if he gave an aspirin to a minor. Yet our children could have a surgery that could kill a human life and forever change theirs, and we would never know. Here in Texas, you have better laws than we have, and I love my state, but that is messed up. My passion for life ignited a passion for Christian education. My husband Greg and I are two of the founding members of the Alliance for Christian Education. The pilot program is Providence Hall in Santa Barbara. Tim comes out every year. We actually have an athletic award named after him. And when an endowment is established, the Alliance will continue to support excellent Christian education throughout the country and the world. We're currently talking with a school in Haiti to learn how what's going on in the classroom in Santa Barbara can benefit these Haitian children. And it brings me tears of joy to know that these students are learning the facts, the scientific truth about life, not the propaganda and the marketing that I received as a kid. So here I am. I'm this pro-choice Christian model. I tell people I'm not an actress, and I have the movies to prove it. But I had an audition for a movie of the week. Topic was the life issue, abortion. And the film claimed to have no bias, but it clearly had a pro-choice slant. The pro-life characters were described as unattractive and unstable. And in my little baby steps of faith, I had made a decision and a commitment not to take roles that I felt would not glorify God. But this posed no problem for me because being pro-choice made perfect sense. I always have been, and I always will be, someone who will fight for women's rights. This is not a women's rights issue, this is a human rights issue. So I'm driving to LA for the audition and traffic is really heavy. And I have a lot of time to think. And I'm thinking about my lines, and then I'm thinking about abortion. And as I'm thinking, I'm realizing I never gave this issue much thought before. And I realized I had more questions than I had answers. I arrive at the audition, the waiting room is filled with actors. More time to wait, more time to think. And then it's my turn. I go in, and the producers are really kind, and they talk to me about how this is a very important film for women. And one of the producers looks me in the eye and says, "You are pro-choice, aren't you?" And as the words "yes" fell out of my mouth, I knew that I wasn't, and I knew I was in the worst place possible for me. I was on the fence, and I hate to be on the fence on anything, especially something as important as this. I choked on the audition, and I went home determined to get answers for my questions. And I didn't want the emotion, I didn't want the politics that divide, I didn't want any of that, I just wanted the facts. I knew that we couldn't know if it was okay to kill it without knowing what it was. So as I started reading the medical textbooks, I learned that at the moment of conception, a new life comes into being. And this new life has a complete genetic blueprint. The blood type is determined. The sex is determined. The unique set of fingerprints is determined. So it's alive. But what kind of life is it? According to the law of biogenesis, all life comes from pre-existing life, and each species reproduces after its own kind. Therefore, human beings can only reproduce other human beings. We don't start out as one species or entity and suddenly become human somewhere along the way. I called my husband in to ask him to look at these textbooks and what I was reading, and he just got very quiet. My husband was pro-choice also. And he said, "How could I have had my nose in these books all these years and missed that?" And I was not happy. I didn't want to be pro-life. And so I called the people who got me on the path to being pro-choice in the first place. I called this women's health clinic. And I said, "You guys got to help me out. Give me your best argument for being pro-choice." And I was told that it's just a clump of cells, and if you get it early enough, it doesn't even look like a baby. And I was like, really? That's your best argument? We're all clumps of cells. And the unborn doesn't look like a baby the same way a baby doesn't look like a teenager and a teenager doesn't look like a senior citizen. But that unborn human being looks exactly the way human beings are supposed to look at that stage of development. We're just not used to seeing them at that stage of development. But technology has come a long way since Roe versus Wade. From there, I got my hands on every piece of literature I could find, both pro-choice and pro-life, including Precious Human Unborn Persons by Gregory Kokel. Highly recommend it. Clearly articulates the science and the protection needed for the unborn. Also, Real Choices by Frederica Matthews Greens that brilliantly describes how abortion is so unliberating to women and how it hurts women and men and our society as a whole. I talked to my pro-choice friends. I heard the arguments. Okay, so you don't like it. You're like suddenly this pro-life person. So, you know, if you don't like it, don't have an abortion. And I mean, that's like saying you don't like slavery, don't own a slave. People would say, well, it's a woman's body. It's her choice. When a woman is pregnant, the unborn can have a different blood type than the mother. The unborn has a different set of fingerprints. And there's a 50% chance that that unborn baby is male and would have a penis. And clearly the mother doesn't have a penis. The unborn is not a part of her body, but resides within her body. The bottom line is this: if the unborn is not a human being, have as many abortions as you want, whenever you want. It doesn't matter. No justification is necessary. If, on the other hand, the unborn is a human being, no justification is adequate unless another human life is at risk, that being the life of the mother. And in that instant, you're not acting to kill. Your intent is to save a human life, the life of the mother. And the tragic consequence is that the unborn dies in the process. But your intent is to save. With abortion, the sole intent is to kill. Shortly after becoming pro-life, I started doing some work with a national nonprofit that does a lot of research and great work with babies. And before getting involved, I like to learn about these nonprofits and the work that they do. And it's a big responsibility. I ask to look at their financials, because you can have a great heart and be a good person, but if you're not a good steward, and if you're not willing to work and get better at it, it cannot be a good thing. The books looked great, so I worked with this nonprofit, helped them raise a lot of money. One day an executive hands me a letter that she had written and signed my name to. And I said, thank you, but I would like to write my own letters. And I said, what is this anyway? And there was a complaint. Someone was concerned it was some kind of an ethics violation. And I said, well, first of all, you didn't address her concern. And please, just tell me, what is it? Did this happen? And if it happened, how did you address it? And if the issue has been fixed, let's be transparent. Let's let her know. So they sent me something that they called a sensitive issues packet. Never even heard what that was before. And as I read, I learned, yes, indeed, this was an isolated incident. They took care of it. So I felt good about that. But as I read, I learned that this nonprofit received $250,000 from another nonprofit to not test on rats, but to test on human fetal tissue. So I called the executive and I said, I have a challenge with this. And she assured me that everything was extremely ethical and said that she would organize a conference call with me with 10 of the top scientists in our nation. We're on the call, and I began by thanking them and telling them my concern. I said that the scientific evidence I see tells me that the unborn is a human being. Please, if any of you have any evidence at all that the unborn is not human, please let me know. I've been seeking for this. And it was silent. And one of the scientists spoke up and said, Kathy, it's a lot more complicated than that. I said, no, it's really not complicated at all. The surrounding issues that come with a crisis pregnancy are complicated, and they must be addressed. And I believe everyone who takes the pro-life stand needs to roll up their sleeves and come beside these women, and that's why I'm so excited to learn what Counsel for Life is doing and all the beneficiaries. Incredible work that all of you are supporting. But I said, no, it's not complicated. It's really quite simple. It's either a human being or it's not. And that was that. And if we only surround ourselves with people who think the way we do, it's more comfortable that way, but how will we ever initiate positive change? During the last presidential election, I was invited to a wedding, and I was seated at a table with a strategist for then Senator Obama. And he asked me if I was going to be voting for his candidate. And there are several issues that respectfully I disagree with our president on. But I told the strategist that if his candidate would either change his position on the life issue or if he would give us some evidence to support his stand that the unborn was not a human being, that I would be happy to vote for him. And the strategist said, well, we can't talk about this here. Your daughter's here, and there's all these guys at the table. It's not appropriate. I said, no, our children know the truth about life. And Roe v. Wade was decided by a bunch of guys. So what do you want to talk about? And we talked about the science of the unborn. And he said, well, you're just conservative. And I said, please don't put me in a box and assume you know all about me because you might know one thing. I'm too odd-shaped. I don't fit in anyone's box. I'm conservative on some issues, and I'm liberal on some issues. And when it comes to the human rights of the unborn, I'm extremely liberal. And he started to dismiss me, and I said, please refute me, but don't dismiss me. And he said, well, we really don't know for sure. It might be a human, but it might not be. And I said, okay, let's suppose you're right. If you were about to demolish a building and someone said, there's a person in there, and someone else said, no, there's not, you're going to make absolutely certain before you take a wrecking ball to it. And the last thing I heard him say was that he was looking for a drink. There are people who say every child should be wanted. And I think when we hear that, lovingly and respectfully, we have to ask, wanted by whom? Because they are wanted. There are families waiting to adopt. They're wanted by God. Every child is wanted. I have a beautiful 17-month-old niece named Polly Love. And Polly is a champion with Down syndrome, and she's battling seizures right now. And she is amazing. And there are people who thought she shouldn't have been born. But God doesn't make mistakes. And yes, we look to overturn Roe versus Wade, but more importantly, this should not be a political football. It should not divide us. We need to come together in love, and I love that Council for Life, they don't condemn, they don't judge, they love and they teach with dignity and respect. And that's so important. There's so much to learn from this group, because what we need to do is change hearts. Because yes, one of the arguments is, well, women are going to have back alley abortions. That's why we should keep them legal. It's too dangerous. Bank robbery is dangerous. We don't make it legal because it's dangerous. We need to change hearts. And in closing, I just want to share something with you. It's not my own, but I believe it to be true. I believe all that you give is all that you get. So give it all you've got. Here's to life at every stage and every joy it brings. Here's to life and dreamers and their dreams. May all your storms be weathered. May all that's good get better. Here's to life, here's to love, here's to each and every one of you. Thank you, and God bless you.
After I had graduated from college, I played collegiate basketball for 4 years, and so everything was just kind of winding down, and I figured that this was just a good time to start over because the relationship wasn't working. 3 weeks later, I found out that I'm pregnant. He immediately said that I needed to go get an abortion. Finally, it just got to the point where I just broke down and finally made the call. And I walk into this very large waiting room with at least 40, 50 girls. On all the chairs were teen magazines, 17 and Cosmo. It was just kind of this idea that look at what, you'll get back. I was just in this horrible, dark state. And the first thing that they do is they take a sonogram. And however, they wouldn't allow me to look at the sonogram. She said it would just make it harder. And they explained that the medicine that they need to give me is a cross between Valium and some form of a pain medicine. They said, as a matter of fact, you probably won't remember most of the procedure because they don't put you under, and as far as I'm concerned, that sounded great. Like, double dose me, the last thing I want to do is be remembering this. I knew I was going to spend $280 that day on an abortion, and she said, when's the last time you used drugs or alcohol? And the night before, I had drank with my very good friend. She threw down her clipboard, and she said, well, we can't do this today then. I said, well, then do it anyway, don't give me the medicine. And she said, okay, you owe us $80 for the sonogram, and we need to schedule you for next Wednesday. And I say, I'm gonna get an abortion, and I'm gonna give you a shot to talk me out of it. They had just recently received a sonogram machine, and she said, let's take a look at that baby in there. And then I see my daughter for the first time, and I see her heartbeat. I'm seeing this very vibrant, living creature inside of me, and there was just no going back from there.
Hi, I'm Jordan. Come in. Let me show you around. This is my poster that my mom gave me. I'm not a perfect girl. My hair doesn't always stay in place. I spill things a lot. I'm pretty clumsy, but when I take a step back, I remember how amazing life truly is, and through all my imperfections, God still loves me.
Ten years ago, I was at a luncheon with Ann Carruth, and she started talking to me about her idea for a council of women to raise money for the resource centers. Then the group of us said yes.
Originally, there were 11 women who were founding members of the council. We all shared a deep commitment as Christians, and we believed strongly in the sanctity of life. And that was because we had really searched the scriptures, and we found out that God loves life, and He values it. And because He values it, we should value it too. Our mission statement is to empower women, men, and youth to make life-affirming choices.
My wife and I, for quite some time, had looked for an organization outside of our church that we could support. And with 3 young children, there was nothing more prevalent in our lives than the beauty of our children, and Council for Life is a perfect fit for that.
Why the council made such a huge impact on me is that women have a choice. And my mom was 20 years old, unmarried, and had to make a choice living in San Francisco, California back in the 60s. And she chose life. If you can encourage women to see beyond their circumstance, they have a human being inside of them. That is life. That is someone that's going to continue on and play an important role in the lives of other people.
I had gone through some post-abortion counseling that had really changed my life. I actually just got back from Mount Rainier. We put on 50-pound backpacks. And about 5 hours in, I was hurting. My friends just started taking the items out of my backpack. They say, hey, we're gonna carry this for you. Why don't you go on up? What a cool picture that is to what Council for Life did for me. They helped me take the weight off my backpack and help me get up to the top of that mountain.
We have such a task ahead of us because you have to change their heart. You can't, it's got to be already there. It's got to be there before they're in crisis. It's just got to be the way they think. And so this girl was reached. And because of that, we have a daughter.
My first abortion, I was a senior in high school, 17 years old, dating the all-star football player in high school. My second abortion, I had just left my first husband for another man, a learned behavior that I learned from my father. My third abortion was the hardest, the most difficult, because I had just come to know Jesus. But I could not ever tell anybody the choices I made that I was responsible for, because what would they think? My way of dealing with it was running, perfectionism, looking good, while all at the same, I was dying inside. But you know what? God wanted me whole. He wanted me to be free, to do the things that He created me to do. I would say to the woman who's had an abortion and lives in that, in darkness and in guilt and shame, that you don't have to live like that. And God loves you and has already forgiven you. And if He can forgive you, who are you not to forgive yourself? I'm grateful that someone saw where I was and didn't give up on me. And that's what Counsel for Life does. Not only do they have people within our organization available to reach out, to listen, to pray, they love you right where you are.
What a powerful impact that Counsel for Life has, and just being able to stamp the grace of Christ on these men's hearts.
What we're trying to do is change the hearts and minds of people in our community and in our culture to a culture of life.
Give that baby a chance, and because he's got a big plan for him.
And you don't know what God has in store for that person that you're carrying inside of you.
They're loved by God, they're formed by God, they're His masterpiece.
One child at a time, one mother at a time. And as we change these mothers, we'll change a nation and a world.
Who knows what that plan is for that saved little boy or little girl? You know, they might end up being a doctor and saving my children's life one day. I don't know.
The biggest gift one can give is the gift of life.
My name is Jordan, and I love life.
It may surprise you to know that 57% of us here today have been touched personally by the termination of an unplanned pregnancy. You just heard Lisa and Brandon boldly speak about the healing they've experienced in accepting God's grace and forgiveness provided through agencies supported by the Counsel for Life. This is central to the Council's mission.